Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are doing something a little different. Usually we take a stack of articles or some new piece of research and we try to synthesize it for you. But today we are cracking open what is essentially a sacred text in its field.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Animator's Survival Kit by Richard Williams.
It really is it's the Bible for anyone interested in how things move. If you walk into literally any animation studio, from Disney to Pixar to just a small indie shop in a basement, you are going to find this book sitting on a desk somewhere. It's heavy, it's dense, and it's brilliant.
And Richard Williams isn't just some, academic, right? He's the guy who directed the animation for Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Exactly. He's a master of the craft. He really bridged the gap between those golden age animators of the 1940s and the modern era. He learned directly from the old masters, and thankfully for us, he wrote it all down.
So we aren't just skimming the whole book today, because, that would take about 12 hours.
At least 12 hours, yeah.
Right. So we are zooming in microscope style, really, on chapter 12. It's a single chapter totally dedicated to a concept called anticipation.
Which, sounds incredibly simple on the surface, doesn't it? But as we dig into this chapter today, it turns out to be one of the most fundamental principles, not just of animation, but of physics, biomechanics, and human behavior.
Yeah, the mission for this deep dive is to explore why this specific principle is the secret sauce to making movement look real. And here is the hook for everyone listening, even if you have zero interest in drawing cartoons. Have you ever thought about why a baseball pitcher winds up? Or why, if you are standing completely still and you want to jump out first, you instinctively bend your knees first?
It feels like habit, doesn't it? Like you're just doing it because you've always done it.
Yeah.
But it's actually this incredibly complex mix of Newtonian physics and psychological communication.
So let's unpack this. Because when we hear the word anticipation, I think most of us immediately jump to the psychological definition. Like, I am anticipating my birthday party, or I'm anticipating a package arriving in the mail. It's about waiting. Is that what Williams is talking about here?
Not exactly, no. In the context of animation and movement mechanics, anticipation isn't about waiting for something to happen. It is the active preparation for an action. It's the physical setup. It is the before that makes the during possible.
The source material brings up a really defining quote right at the start by Bill Tytla. Now, for those who don't know, Tytla was a legendary animator.
A true titan of the industry. He was one of the original Disney animators. He animated the devil in Fantasia. He did the dwarfs in Snow White. He was famous for animating weight and real power. And he had this incredibly rigorous, almost dangerously simplified view of the craft. He claimed there are really only three things in animation. Just three.
That seems impossible for an art form that complicated. So what are they?
One is anticipation, two is action, and three is reaction.
That's it. Just those three.
That's the whole list. Tytla argued that if you learn to do those three things well, they imply everything else. You can animate a falling leaf, a nuclear explosion, or a really subtle facial expression if you master that sequence. Because everything has a preparation, the event itself and the aftermath.
It reminds me of that famous storytelling advice from Charlie Chaplin, which is also right there on our source stack for today. And Chaplin was obviously a master of movement since he worked entirely in silent film.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Chaplin relied entirely on physical clarity. If the audience didn't understand his movement, they didn't understand the plot. He had no dialogue to fall back on. So his rule was, first, tell him what you're going to do. That's the anticipation.
Right.
Second, do it. That's the action. And third, tell him that you've done it. That's the reaction.
Tell him what you're going to do.
Yeah.
That is so interesting because it frames movement as a form of communication. It's not just about getting a body from point A to point B. It's about signaling your intent to the people watching.
Precisely. And that is a perfect segue into the psychology of this. Why do we need anticipation? If we look at the notes from the chapter, Williams references the great French mime Marcel Marceau.
I just love that we are citing a mime on a deep dive. Mimes get a bad rap, but they really are masters of body language.
They have to be, because they are dealing with invisible objects. Marceau said use big anticipation. And the reason is pure audience psychology. The audience needs to see what is going to happen before it actually happens.
Why, though? Why can't they just see the action itself? Like, if I punch someone, can't the audience just see the punch?
Because usually the action itself is just too fast. If a character just suddenly zips across the screen without a wind-up or throws a fist without drawing it back, it comes out of nowhere. It looks like a glitch in a video game. It totally confuses the viewer. By using anticipation, the audience spots the setup. They understand, oh, he's about to run or she's about to punch. They can as Williams puts it, anticipate it with us. They go on the journey with the character rather than just chasing after them trying to figure out what just happened.
So it's heavily about clarity. It prevents the audience from missing the vital moment.
Exactly, it primes the brain. But here's where it gets really interesting. It is not just for the audience, it's not just some visual magic trick. It's also an anatomical necessity for the character or the real human being doing the moving.
Right. The source talks about the internal perspective.
Think about how your own body works. Before you make a move, you usually think of the action first. The brain fixes on the sense of what it wants to say or do. Then it sends signals to a very complex series of muscles to prepare for that movement. You brace your core, you shift your weight, you grip the floor with your toes.
The text mentions an exception to that, though, right? Pre-programmed responses.
Right, yes. There are things we do on absolute autopilot, like shifting gears in a manual car if you've been driving for 20 years. You don't consciously wind up for that, your hand just does it because the neural pathway is so paved. But for almost every big action throwing, jumping, running, lifting something heavy, there is a preparatory phase. You simply cannot defy gravity or inertia without it.
Okay, so we have established that we need it physically, and the audience needs it visually. Now I want to get into the actual rules of how it looks, because there's a very specific directionality to this. It isn't there. It's not just wiggling around before you move.
No, random movement is an anticipation.
Yeah.
There is a golden rule of anticipation provided in Chapter 12, and it is deeply rooted in Newtonian physics. The rule is that anticipation is always in the opposite direction to where the main action is going to go.
Go back before you go forward.
Precisely. If you want to go up, you must go down first. If you want to go right, you must anticipate to the left. If you want to throw something forward, you have to bring your arm back.
The visual metaphors in the book are really helpful here. He talks about an archery bow.
It's the perfect example to picture. Think about an archer. You cannot shoot an arrow forward by pushing the string forward. It doesn't work, the arrow just falls on the ground. You have to pull the string back. The further back you pull, that's the anticipation, the stronger the shot forward, which is the action.
You're building up potential energy.
Exactly. The anticipation creates the potential energy, and the release converts it into kinetic energy.
And the slingshot is exactly the same thing.
The exact principle.
Okay.
The further you pull the rubber band back, the farther the rock goes. So in animation and in real life, any action is strengthened by being preceded by its opposite.
So if I'm an animator and I want a character to jump really high, I don't just draw them flying upward from a standing position.
No, that would look terrible. It would look like they're being pulled up by an invisible wire. It looks magical or completely weightless. To make it look like they are jumping using their own muscles, you have to draw them crouching down, first compressing that energy, squash down, and then spring up. Down before up.
It's so simple, but I feel like once you know this, you just see it everywhere.
You really do. Watch a cat pounce, it gets low and wiggles its back end. Watch a sprinter start, they get low into the blocks. And what's fascinating is how this applies to timing as well. It's not just about the direction, it's about the speed.
The rhythm of the movement. Because we clearly don't move at a constant speed like a conveyor belt.
No, not at all. If you were to describe a punch or a throw, it naturally implies a rhythm. Is the windup usually fast or slow compared to the actual hit?
I guess usually the windup is slower, like you pull back slowly and then pow.
Correct. The typical formula described in the text is a slow anticipation, followed by a violent fast action. Williams actually calls it the zip.
The zip? I like that.
You have the slow intake of energy, the wind-up, and then the ZIP, the release. That contrast in timing is what gives the animation its life. If the wind-up was exactly as fast as the throw, the whole thing would just look like a blurry mess. It would look like a weird vibration rather than a deliberate human action.
Let's break down the mechanics of a throw, because the source material has this really great breakdown of a figure throwing a stone or a ball. It's not just the arm movement, is it?
No, and this is where amateur animators and sometimes even bad actors often get it completely wrong. A throw involves the entire body. The source specifically points out that the hips go first.
The hips. I always think of throwing as just a shoulder and arm thing.
Watch a professional baseball pitcher. The very first thing that happens in the windup is the hips turn and the leg comes up. They're putting their entire body mass into position. They start with a slow windup, loading that potential energy into the torso. Then they step forward, the hips uncork, and the arm acts like a whip. It's an explosive release that trails behind the body.
There was a specific note in the text here that I want to touch on because it's interesting. It mentions a difference in how people throw based on athleticism.
Yes. Williams notes that often, unless a woman is athletic, or honestly a small child of any gender, they might throw without using their body mass. This is that old stereotypical throwing like a girl idea, which is really just throwing without mechanics. They might just use the arm.
Which changes the anticipation completely.
It does. It completely eliminates that deep body turn and the hip rotation. So if you are animating a professional pitcher versus a toddler throwing a toy, the anticipation looks totally different. The toddler might just raise their hand up and flop it forward. The pitcher uses the opposite direction roll with their entire skeleton. It actually tells you a story about the character's skill level just by how they anticipate the move.
This idea of latent force or potential energy really comes through in the example of the runner's start. We've all heard ready, set, go.
We have. And think about what those words actually mean physically. We hear them as instructions, but they are literal descriptions of physics.
Ready is just standing there.
Ready is the spans getting into position. But set, what happens on set?
You crouch down, you lift your hips, you lean forward. Actually, wait, you lean back onto the blocks
You
frame.
compress, you go back and down into the blocks. That is the anticipation. You are loading the spring. If you just stood upright and tried to sprint, you'd have absolutely no leverage. You have to go back to go forward.
And then go is the explosion forward.
Exactly. That set position creates what the text calls latent force. It is energy just waiting to be released. It creates visual tension. And tension is inherently interesting to watch.
I love that. Okay, let's pivot a bit. We've talked about sports like archery, baseball, sprinting. But what does this mean for normal, everyday people? Because I definitely don't sprint to the fridge.
Usually not, no, unless you're really hungry.
Usually.
Yeah.
But the source moves into everyday movement mechanics.
Yeah.
And this is where I had a huge aha moment while reading. Let's talk about sitting and standing.
The chair example. This is one of the best demonstrations of anticipation because we all do it dozens of times a day and we never realize it.
So walk me through it. I'm sitting in a chair. I want to stand up. What do I actually do?
We'll try to stand up straight. Literally try to move your head vertically up towards the ceiling from a seated position without moving anything else. Keep your back completely against the chair and just try to rise.
I'm imagining doing it right now. And I can't. I'd be stuck.
Yeah.
My center of gravity is way too far back.
Exactly. You cannot just rise vertically. To stand up, you have to perform an anticipation. You usually rock back slightly, just a tiny bit to get momentum. And then crucially, you must throw your upper body forward and down.
Nose over toes. I remember a gym teacher telling me that once.
That's the anticipation. You have to go down and forward to generate the leverage to go up. You are physically shifting your center of gravity over your feet so your legs can push.
So if you watch a cartoon where a character just slides upward out of a chair, like they are in an invisible elevator,
It looks completely wrong. It looks like they're being abducted by aliens. It looks weightless. Real weight requires that leverage. It requires the down before the up.
this gets even more technical with walking. The chapter has this whole section called the walking dilemma. Which foot do you start with?
This is a classic animator's headache. Let's say you are standing still and you want to turn to your left and walk away. Which foot is it natural to step with first?
If I'm turning left, I feel like I step with my left foot.
Right. That is the obvious way. You start with the foot nearest the direction you are going. Your body weight shifts to the right leg. You lift the left leg and you step out. It's clean. It's open.
But what if I step with the right foot? The one farthest away from where I want to go.
The source text calls this unnatural or the mistake, though people do it sometimes. Think about the mechanics of it. If you turn left but step with your right foot, you are crossing your own body. You're tangling your legs up.
Yeah, that feels awkward just picturing it. I can picture myself tripping over my own feet.
But here is the solution provided in the text. If you must start with the wrong foot, that far right foot, you have to use anticipation to make it work. You can't just lift it and cross.
Absolutely.
You first have to shift your weight. The right foot has to literally back up or move slightly opposite to the direction of travel to free itself from the body weight, and then it can swing over.
So even in a stumble or an awkward step, the rule of anticipation saves the day. You have to prep the movement.
It creates the space for the movement to happen. Without that little backup anticipation, the character would look like they were sliding on ice. The anticipation grounds the character in reality.
I want to touch on two other examples from this section before we move on to acting. Ballet and diving. Because these seem like highly stylized versions of what we just discussed.
They are heavily refined versions, yes. In ballet, you have the plie. What is a plie?
It's bending the knees.
It is simply an anticipation. Usually a plie is the preparation for a jump, like an entreshot. You cannot jump with straight legs. You must go down before you go up. The dancers make it look incredibly graceful. They keep their posture perfect, but physically. It's the exact same mechanics as the runner on the blocks. It's loading the spring.
And the diving board example is wild because it's a chain reaction. It actually involves an external object.
It is a really complex chain of anticipations. Think about it. The diver walks to the end of the board. That's a setup.
Yeah.
Then they jump up to land on the end of the board. Why?
To push the board down.
Exactly. They are using the board's anticipation. The diver lands, the board bends down, which is anticipation, and then the board snaps up, which is the action throwing the diver high into the air.
It's like the diver and the board are partners in physics.
They are. The board goes down so the diver can go up. It's the law of opposite direction, perfectly visualized. If the board didn't bend, if it didn't anticipate, the diver wouldn't get any height at all.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. We've covered the physics, we've covered the biomechanics of humans and boards, but animation isn't just about moving puppets around perfectly. It's about acting. It's about performance and conveying emotion.
This is where we bridge the gap between moving and living. Because a machine moves, a living thing thinks and then moves.
The text has this great section on hand gestures and thinking, because anticipation isn't always a giant full-body movement, right? It can be extremely subtle.
It can be tiny. The example given in the chapter is a hand picking up a pen or preparing to write a letter.
If I just put my hand down on the paper and write, that's mechanical.
It's robotic. It implies absolutely no thought process. But as the source suggests, if you want to show the character is actually thinking or is conscious, you put in a small anticipation. Before the hand goes down to the paper, it goes up slightly, just a hover.
That little hover.
That tiny upward movement says, I am considering what to write. It signals intention. The source says this makes the character feel alive. It's the stark difference between a machine executing a command and a human mind formulating a thought.
It's amazing how one little upward drift of the wrist can change the whole meaning of the scene.
It breathes air into the movement.
And then you have the exact opposite of subtle. The showbiz gestures.
The theatrical stuff. The source shows a showbiz woman putting a hand on her hip.
She doesn't just move her hand from her side directly to her hip in a straight line.
No, that would be boring. That's efficient, sure, but it's not entertaining. In the showbiz style, the movement follows a figure eight pattern.
A figure eight.
The hand goes out, circles around, flourishes, and then settles on the hip. The wrist leads the action, the fingers trail behind. It's fluid.
It's flamboyant.
It is. But structurally, it is still anticipation. The hand goes out and around, which is the anticipation to settle in, which is the action. It decorates the movement. It screams, look at me.
The chapter also mentions magicians here, which is brilliant. It says, anticipation is a magician's stock in trade.
I love this connection so much. Magicians rely heavily on anticipation to control your eyes.
Misdirection.
Exactly. If a magician wants you to look at their right hand, they will perform a large, flourishing anticipation with it. Maybe a figure eight, maybe a big lift. Your eye naturally follows that big motion. It's purely instinctual.
Meanwhile, the left hand is stealing your watch.
Precisely. The left hand is doing the action without the anticipation. It's moving efficiently and stealthily. They use the audience's natural instinct to track anticipation to completely hide the mechanics of the trick. The source describes the visual flow of the hands, the wrist leading, the fingers trailing. It creates this mesmerizing effect that dictates exactly where the audience looks.
So anticipation can clarify an action, but it can also be weaponized to distract from it.
That's the sheer power of controlling the viewer's focus. You are directing their attention like a spotlight.
All right, now we have to talk about violence.
The punch.
The punch. There is a fascinating history lesson in this chapter about how animators used to depict a punch versus how they do it now.
This connects right back to our timing discussion. In the old way, or the early days of animation, they treated a punch like hitting a pudding.
Hitting a pudding, that sounds incredibly unsatisfying.
Meaning they would show the fist making solid contact with the chin, and they would hold that drawing for maybe 4 frames. They wanted to show you, look, he is hitting him. Right here.
So see the fist pressed on the face.
Right. But the problem is it totally kills the momentum. It looks static. It looks like a pose, not a hit. It looks like he's just pushing his face really hard.
And then Art Babbitt came along.
Art Babbitt, the legendary creator of Goofy. Grim Natwick, another legend who animated Betty Boop and Snow White, quotes Babbitt in the text. Babbitt said, don't ever show the hand hitting the chin.
Never. Like, leave it out completely.
Never. The modern technique involves 3 distinct steps. One is anticipation broadcast the punch, pull that fist way back. 2 is action the swing forward.
And 3?
3 is the result. You show the hand after it has passed the chin. You show the head already knocked back the neck, stretched out, the sweat flying off the face.
You skip the contact frame entirely.
You skip it. There's absolutely no point of contact drawing.
That seems counterintuitive to me. I want to see the hit.
It does seem counterintuitive, but think about the actual speed of a real punch. It's too fast for the human eye to register the exact millisecond of impact. We only really register the wind-up and the aftermath. By editing out the contact, the animation actually feels faster and much harder. It creates a snap.
The text mentions that Ken Harris said they used to do this in old Western movies, too.
Yes. In the editing room, they would physically cut out the frames of film where the actor's fist actually touched the stuntman's jaw that just show the massive swing, cut the film, and then show the guy falling backward over a table.
And the sound effect does a ton of the work, too.
The source notes that the sound effect happens when the fist is already past the face. The strength comes from the displacement, how far the character is physically knocked back, not the image of the hit itself.
That is 100% movie magic. We think we see the hit, but we actually just see the consequence of it.
And we feel it more because our brain fills in the gap with maximum impact. We imagine a much harder hit than any animator could ever draw.
So we've got clear communication, we've got impact, but what about comedy? Because Chapter 12 spends a really good amount of time on how anticipation is used for gags.
Comedy is often about subverting expectations. And since anticipation by definition creates an expectation, I'm about to do X, you can create comedy by setting up X and then delivering Y.
The bait and switch.
Exactly. The text uses the balloon gag. Imagine a character takes a massive chest-expanding inhale, huge anticipation, eyes bugging out, shoulders raised.
You fully expect them to blow up a giant balloon.
Right, but then they blow into the balloon and a tiny, pathetic little bubble appears.
The contrast between the huge setup and the tiny result is the joke itself.
And it works perfectly in reverse, too. A character takes a tiny casual sip of air, really small anticipation, and then effortlessly blows up a balloon the size of a house.
Shocking result.
That's the classic comedy formula. Lead the audience to expect one thing via anticipation, then give them something else entirely.
The piano gag is another classic mentioned in the text.
Well, the concert pianist, you see this in Bugs Bunny cartoons all the time. The pianist does this massive, violent wind-up. They throw their arms high in the air, fingers splayed, hair wild.
Yep.
They gently touch one single key. Plink.
He gets a laugh every single time.
It does, and it only works because of the anticipation. Without the wind-up, the plink isn't funny at all. The humor is entirely in the mismatch between the preparation and the action.
Now I have a question. We've talked a lot about big anticipation, Marcel Marceau style. But what if I want a character to move fast, like really snappy? I don't want a slow wind up. I want it to feel electric and sudden.
This raises an extremely important question about style. If you telegraph absolutely everything with a big, slow wind-up, it can start to feel sluggish or corny. Sometimes you need what animators call the snap.
The snap.
Also known as the invisible anticipation.
Invisible? How can anticipation be invisible?
This is a real pro technique. Let's say a character is suddenly surprised and looks up. If you just draw them looking up, it's okay. But to give it real bite, you put in a drawing where their head dips down, but only for one single frame.
That's like a fraction of a second.
It's 1/24th of a second usually. It is literally too fast for the conscious eye to see. You won't actually see the head go down, but you will feel the snap as it shoots up.
So the brain registers the physical contrast even if the eye doesn't consciously see the image.
Exactly. It adds a crispness to the action. It triggers that biological recognition of force without slowing down the action at all. The text gives the example of a soccer goalie.
The goalie making a save.
Right. If the goalie needs to block a ball fast, they might do a foot flourish or a quick kick in the opposite direction for just a split second before lunging. It gives the movement that whip-crack energy.
It's basically a cheat code for physics.
It really is. It's compressing the Newtonian rule into a single frame to trick the human eye into feeling speed.
There's one more advanced technique mentioned, and it's the double anticipation. This sounds a bit like Inception. Anticipating the anticipation.
It kind of is. The example used is a baseball player catching a ball to throw it.
Okay, visualize this for us.
So the ball's coming at him, he catches it. But the catch itself has momentum right. The glove physically goes back with the ball.
He absorbs the impact of the catch.
Right. So for maybe 2 frames, his arm is moving backward. That is the first anticipation. It's a reaction to the catch. But then to make the throw to the base, he doesn't just throw from there. He goes into the normal windup. He lifts the arm, cranks it back further, or in a specific throwing arc, that's the second anticipation, and then he throws.
So it's a small reaction to the catch that acts as a setup for the big setup for the throw.
Exactly. It makes the movement feel totally organic. It shows the body dealing with real-world forces, the force of the incoming ball, then the generation of force for the outgoing ball.
It connects the dots.
It makes it fluid. If he just cut the ball, stopped completely, and then threw it, it would look incredibly robotic. The double anticipation bridges the 2 actions. It shows the real-time transfer of energy.
So what does this all mean for us? We've looked at arrows, dancers, runners, punches, and balloons.
It means that movement, at its core, is a language.
And anticipation is the grammar of that language.
That is a brilliant way to put it. It tells the viewer whether that viewer is watching a big-budget movie or just watching you stand up from a sofa. Look here, this is about to happen.
Key takeaways time. If we had to summarize the deep dive on Chapter 12 of the Animator's Survival Kit.
I'd boil down to 3 main points. 1 is physics. You must go back to go forward. Opposite direction always. Potential energy creates kinetic energy.
2 is timing. The zip. Slow wind up, fast action. That contrast creates the energy and the life.
And 3 is impact is in the mind. Whether it's leaving out the contact frame of a punch entirely or using an invisible 1-frame anticipation, you are manipulating the audience's perception to create a feeling of true force.
And let's not forget the enduring wisdom of Bill Tytla.
Be simple, be direct, be clear. He said, make a statement and finish it simply.
It's funny how much agonizing effort goes into making something look simple, isn't it?
That is the ultimate paradox of animation. You have to deeply understand complex mechanics, anatomy, and timing just to make a character simply walk across a room without looking like a zombie.
The text mentions that anticipation leads naturally into other concepts like takes and accents, but we will have to save those for another deep dive.
There is always more to learn.
Here's a provocative closing thought for everyone listening to mull over. The next time you are watching a movie, or better yet, just people watching at a coffee shop, actively look for the anticipation. Watch your friends stand up. Watch someone hail a cab. Watch a dog jump for a frisbee.
Look for the back before forward.
Because once you see it, you will never unsee it. You'll realize that we are all broadcasting our moves constantly, milliseconds before we make them.
We are all communicating even when we aren't speaking a word.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of movement. Stay curious, and we will catch you on the next one.
See you then.